I said, "Good evening. It's been a cold day." He said he had not noticed it himself, but dared say I was right. We remained silent for a few seconds, and then, wishing to put it pleasantly, I said, "I believe I have the honour of addressing the ghost of the gentleman who had the accident with the weight?" He smiled, and said it was very good of me to remember it. One weight was not much to boast of, but still every little helped. I was somewhat staggered at his answer. I had expected a groan of remorse. The ghost appeared, on the contrary, to be rather conceited over the business. I thought that, as he had taken my reference to the weight so quietly, perhaps he would not be offended if I questioned him about the organ grinder. I felt curious about that poor boy. "Is it true," I asked, "that you had a hand in the death of that Italian peasant lad, who came to the town once with a barrel organ that played nothing but Scotch airs?" He quite fired up.
"Had a hand in it!" he exclaimed indignantly. "Who has dared to pretend that he assisted me? I murdered the youth myself. Nobody helped me. Alone I did it. Show me the man who says I didn't."
I calmed him. I assured him that I had never, in my own mind, doubted that he was the real and only assassin. And I went on and asked him what he had done with the body of the cornet player he had killed. He said,
"To which one may you be alluding?"
"Oh, were there any more, then?" I inquired. He smiled, and gave a little cough. He said he did not like to appear to be boasting, but that, counting trombones, there were 7. "Dear me," I replied, "you must have had quite a busy time of it, one way and another." He said that perhaps he ought not to be the one to say so, but that really, speaking of ordinary middle society, he thought there were few ghosts who could look back upon a life of more sustained usefulness. He puffed away in silence for a few seconds, while I sat watching him. I had never seen a ghost smoking a pipe before, that I could remember, and it interested me. I asked him what tobacco he used, and he replied,
"The ghost of cut Cavendish, as a rule."
He explained that the ghost of all the tobacco that a man smoked in life belonged to him when he became dead. He said he himself had smoked a good deal of cut Cavendish when he was alive, so that he was well supplied with the ghost of it now. I observed that it was a useful thing to know that, and I made up my mind to smoke as much tobacco as ever I could before I died. I thought I might as well start at once, so I said I would join him in a pipe, and he said,
"Do, old man."
And I reached over and got out the necessary paraphernalia from my coat pocket, and lit up. We grew quite chummy after that, and he told me all his crimes. He said he had lived next door once to a young lady who was learning to play the guitar, while a gentleman who practised on the bass viol lived opposite, and he, with fiendish cunning, had introduced these 2 unsuspecting young people to one another, and had persuaded them to elope with each other against their parents' wishes, and take their musical instruments with them, and they had done so, and before the honeymoon was over she had broken his head with the bass viol, and he had tried to cram the guitar down her throat, and had injured her for life. My friend said he used to lure muffin men into the passage, and then stuff them with their own wares till they burst and died. He said he had quieted 18 that way. Young men and women who recited long and dreary poems at evening parties, and callow youths who walked about the streets late at night playing concertinas, he used to get together and poison in batches of 10, so as to save expense. And park orators and temperance lecturers he used to shut up 6 in a small room, with a glass of water and a collection box apiece, and let them talk each other to death. It did one good to listen to him. I asked him when he expected the other ghosts, the ghosts of the wait and the cornet player, and the German band that Uncle John had mentioned. He smiled, and said they would never come again, any of them. I said, "Why, isn't it true, then, that they meet you here every Christmas Eve for a row?" He replied that it was true. Every Christmas Eve for 25 years had he and they fought in that room, but they would never trouble him nor anybody else again. One by one had he laid them out, spoilt, and utterly useless for all haunting purposes. He had finished off the last German band ghost that very evening, just before I came upstairs, and had thrown what was left of it out through the slit between the window sashes. He said it would never be worth calling a ghost again. "I suppose you will still come yourself, as usual?" I said. "They would be sorry to miss you, I know." "Oh, I don't know," he replied. "There's nothing much to come for now. Unless," he added kindly, "you are going to be here. I'll come if you will sleep here next Christmas Eve. I have taken a liking to you," he continued. "You don't fly off screeching when you see a party, and your hair doesn't stand on end. You've no idea," he said, "how sick I am of seeing people's hair standing on end." He said it irritated him. Just then a slight noise reached us from the yard below, and he started and turned deathly black. "You are ill," I cried, springing towards him. "Tell me the best thing to do for you. Shall I drink some brandy and give you the ghost of it?" He remained silent, listening intently for a moment, and then he gave a sigh of relief, and the shade came back to his cheek. "It's all right," he murmured. "I was afraid it was the cock." "Oh, it's too early for that," I said. "Why, it's only the middle of the night." "Oh, that doesn't make any difference to those cursed chickens," he replied bitterly. "They would just as soon crow in the middle of the night as at any other time. Sooner, if they thought it would spoil a chap's evening out. I believe they do it on purpose." He said a friend of his, the ghost of a man who had killed a water-rate collector, used to haunt a house in Longacre, where they kept fowls in the cellar, and every time a policeman went by and flashed his bull's-eye down the grating, the old cock there would fancy it was the sun, and start crowing like mad, when of course the poor ghost had to dissolve, and it would, in consequence, get back home sometimes as early as 1 o'clock in the morning, swearing fearfully because it had only been out for an hour. I agreed that it seemed very unfair. "Oh, it's an absurd arrangement altogether," he continued, quite angrily. "I can't imagine what our old man could have been thinking of when he made it. As I have said to him over and over again, have a fixed time, and let everybody stick to it. Say 4 o'clock in summer, and 6 in winter. Then one would know what one was about." "How do you manage when there isn't any cock handy?" I inquired. He was on the point of replying, when again he started and listened. This time I distinctly heard Mr. Bowles's cock next door crow twice. "There you are," he said, rising and reaching for his hat.